15 of the 22 drivers on this grid have no seat for 2027. The whole market is frozen, and it is frozen because of one man who has not said a word. Carlos Sainz broke that silence first. He is ready to join Audi, and the second that leaked, the paddock stopped pretending this was calm. A top seat, a Red Bull exit clause, and a quiet phone call to Yuki Tsunoda are suddenly all in play. So why is everyone still waiting on the one name Sainz is really chasing? Sainz is not hiding what he wants anymore. The reports moving through the paddock all land on the same team. Carlos Sainz has picked Audi as the seat he wants for 2027. And this is not some random pairing thrown together by rumor. The man running the Audi project is Mattia Binotto, the same Binotto who ran Ferrari when Sainz drove there. The same Binotto who has openly admitted he tried to sign Sainz once already and lost him. A decision Sainz made back then for family and timing rather than any doubt about the project. The door never really closed. The interest is real. The history is real. And with Williams falling apart around him, the timing has never looked sharper. The door he keeps glancing at has 4 rings on it. But one driver wanting a new seat is not why the entire grid is holding its breath. It is what that one move would set off. Sainz to Audi is not a single transfer. It is the first push in a line of dominoes. A seat opens above him, a seat opens below him, and Williams is already said to be lining up Yuki Tsunoda to slide straight into the gap Sainz leaves behind. One signature, and the whole board starts to move at once. This is a chain reaction. Pull Sainz out of Williams and you do not create a single empty seat. You create a run of them, each one dragging the next one open, all the way up the grid to the champion at the top, and all the way down to the reserve driver waiting for a phone call. And you can see exactly why he wants it. After 9 rounds of the 2026 season, Sainz has 6 points. 6. His Williams sits 8th, in a car that turned up to the very first test overweight and never recovered. This is a driver who was winning Grand Prix a season ago, in a seat he only took when Ferrari moved on for Lewis Hamilton, now fighting for scraps at the back of the field. He bet on the Williams project as the patient move. That bet has become the cage he is trying to climb out of. So this should be simple. Except Sainz will not actually commit. Ask him about his future, and he does not sell the dream. He asks to be left alone until the summer break. He says his priority is to stay, then turns around and tells Williams to do more, to fix what is broken. A man who is happy where he is does not need a deadline. And a man who is certain about Audi does not keep the whole grid waiting. So what is he really holding out for? The strangest part is that Sainz already had a way out. His Williams deal was signed as a 2-year agreement with the option to extend, one that on paper can run all the way to 2028, and it even carried an early exit for this season, a trapdoor he could have pulled to walk away clean. He did not pull it. He stayed, then quietly pushed the team while reports say Williams opened an internal review into how badly this season had gone. Think about that for a second. The driver everyone now paints as desperate to leave is holding a door open behind him and waiting to see if a better one opens in front. So, this was never really about whether Sainz wants out. It is about what he is waiting for. And what he is waiting for is not at Audi at all. This was never really just about Sainz. 15 of the 22 drivers racing this year have nothing locked for next season. 15. That is not a silly season. That is a stampede waiting for a gate to open. Only a handful of seats are genuinely nailed down. Ferrari is set with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes is holding firm on George Russell and its young star Kimi Antonelli, the rookie who is now leading the championship, while Red Bull watches from a distance. McLaren has Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri tied down on long deals. Alpine has Pierre Gasly signed through 2028. Everything else, every other cockpit on the grid, is a question mark hanging in the air, and it is about to get more crowded, not less. Cadillac has arrived as a brand new 11th team, and it did not turn up empty. It brought 2 more seats and its own pairing, and even there the names refused to settle, with talk drifting on and off the project all season. 11 teams now, more than 20 seats, and well over half of them unresolved past this year. A market like that does not freeze by accident. It freezes because everyone is waiting on the same domino to fall first, and nobody wants to commit until they see which way it tips. That first domino is not Carlos Sainz. Sainz is just the one standing where you can see him. The real one is a 4-time world champion who has spent the last month refusing to end the speculation, and every team on that grid knows his name. Max Verstappen. One detail got lost in all of it. Verstappen is under contract to Red Bull all the way through 2028. On the surface that is done, sealed, no story at all. But buried inside that contract sits a performance clause. The kind of clause that has always been there. The kind Verstappen himself has never once had a reason to use. And this season, for the first time, the math around that clause turned live. Look at how far Red Bull has fallen, because that is what makes the clause dangerous. The team that owned this sport for years is now watching a Mercedes rookie run away with the title. Its own car nowhere near the front, its 4-time champion reduced to hunting the same points he used to lap the field for. A clause that measures whether a champion is winning was harmless for as long as he kept winning. The moment he stopped, it woke up. It woke up at the British Grand Prix. Verstappen was running near the front, and then a rear wing let go at high speed and pitched him out of the race while Leclerc went on to win it. One failure, and suddenly the numbers stopped adding up in his favor. He sits 7th in the championship with 76 points, a champion stranded behind 2 Mercedes, 2 Ferraris, and both McLarens. With only a couple of rounds left before the summer break, it is no longer mathematically possible for him to climb into the top 2 by the time the season pauses. In plain terms, the condition that keeps that exit clause asleep can no longer be met. The timing of that is almost too perfect. Reports out of the Netherlands and Germany now point at a single date, the day after the Hungarian Grand Prix, as the moment the clause can actually come alive. That is the last race before the break, and there is a second deadline stacked right behind it, with one German report claiming Verstappen would have to formally trigger any move by his own birthday at the end of September. 2 clocks, both ticking, both pointing at the same few weeks. The calendar is working against him too. This season lost 2 of its opening races, with Bahrain and Saudi Arabia both wiped off the schedule, which means fewer rounds than normal before the break, and even less room for the math to swing back his way. Every cancelled race is one less chance to climb into that top 2. The window is already smaller than it was, and it is still shrinking. And this next detail explains everything. Red Bull knows exactly what that clause is worth, and they tried to make it disappear. The German press reported that the team's leadership went to Verstappen's side with an offer to simply buy the clause out, to pay to delete it from the contract, a figure put at around €8 million. Verstappen's camp said no, you do not turn down €8 million to keep a door shut, unless you are thinking very seriously about walking through it. And for Red Bull, that refusal is a nightmare. This is a team built around one driver, a team that has watched its advantage evaporate and its rivals surge, and the one asset holding the whole project together is the very man now weighing his exit. Lose Verstappen and Red Bull does not just lose a champion, it loses the reason anyone still believed the good years were coming back. So they offered to pay to close the door, and he told them to keep their money. His own manager put it about as clearly as these things ever get said out loud. He confirmed the contract runs to 2028, confirmed the exit clauses exist and always have, and then added the line that should worry every rival on the grid. Max, he said, was not born to race in the midfield. That is not a man planning to stay put. So where does a 4-time champion actually go? This is where the chain gets tangled, because the obvious landing spot is a door officially bolted just as tight as Audi's. Mercedes has already ruled itself out, with Toto Wolff insisting Russell and Antonelli both stay. That leaves McLaren, the fastest car on the grid, and the one meeting that actually happened points straight at them. The important part is who started it. This was not McLaren chasing Verstappen. Verstappen's own people opened the talks themselves. But McLaren has a problem of its own, and it is the same problem Audi has. There is no empty seat. Norris is locked in for years. Piastri signed a long extension that runs deep into the future, and McLaren's leadership has spent months laughing the rumors off. Its team boss keeps insisting both drivers have their names carved into those seats, that he would only ever look at Verstappen if one of his own somehow slipped on a banana peel climbing out of the bath, that if he simply had a third car, he would sign the champion in a heartbeat. Every answer is a denial wrapped around a compliment, and in this sport, that pairing is never an accident. One report out of the paddock claimed a Verstappen deal was already in its closing stages, a 3-year agreement described as nearly done. Other, more cautious voices poured cold water on it within days, calling the whole thing hot air. And Piastri's own manager dismissed the exit talk as fiction. So why does anyone still believe it? Because of the one move McLaren cannot deny. Verstappen's longtime race engineer, the voice in his ear for every title he has won, is crossing over to McLaren. You do not move a man's most trusted engineer to a rival team by accident. That transfer is the quietest, loudest signal in the entire paddock, and it tells you the conversations are real even when everyone at the podium insists they are not. And think about what that pairing would actually mean. The fastest car on the grid, handed to the most ruthless driver of his generation. A partnership like that would tilt the entire order of the sport for years to come, which is exactly why every rival is watching this one meeting like their own future depends on it. Because it might. The chain that follows is what makes the whole grid nervous. Piastri sits 6th in the standings, and reports have swirled all season about a clause in his own contract tied to exactly that kind of position. The whisper is that if he slips outside the top few by the summer break, a door of his own could open, and the team most often named as his landing spot is Red Bull itself. Verstappen walks out of Red Bull and into McLaren, and the Red Bull seat he leaves behind gets filled by the very McLaren driver he displaced. A straight swap at the top of the sport, with a chain of smaller moves rippling out beneath it. And the driver whose management has already been quietly knocking on exactly those Red Bull doors, testing exactly those seats, is Carlos Sainz. That is what Sainz is really waiting for. Not a call from Audi, a gap that only opens if the man at the very top jumps first. Before we go further, if you are following this and you want the next move the second it breaks, take a moment to subscribe, because this story is going to move fast once that gate opens. Meanwhile, another door is being watched just as closely, and it is the one Sainz would leave behind. Because the second Sainz vacates that Williams seat, Williams has a problem and a shortlist, and one name on that shortlist has been circling this sport waiting for a way back in: Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda spent this season on the outside. He was dropped from the senior Red Bull setup for 2026, watched a younger driver take the seat he thought was his, and slid into a reserve role, the racing equivalent of standing in the corridor hoping someone opens a door. And now the reports have him linked to that Williams cockpit, the very seat that only exists if Sainz gets his own escape. You would think someone in his position would have gone quiet. Instead, his name keeps surfacing at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right seat, every time this chain gets discussed. The link itself is thin, and that is almost the point. Some in the paddock have waved it away as little more than a hopeful rumor built on an old connection between Tsunoda and the people now running Williams. Others have him headed somewhere else entirely, to America and IndyCar with the backing of Honda, or into a Haas seat if that team decides to move on from one of its own. But thin rumors in this sport have a habit of hardening the instant a real seat opens, and every one of those stories is waiting on the same trigger. Nobody signs Tsunoda anywhere until they know whether the Williams seat is empty, and the Williams seat is not empty until Sainz has somewhere to go. And Williams would not let that seat go quietly. This is the team that fought hard to sign Sainz in the first place, that sold him a vision of a climb back to the front, that built a chunk of its future around him. Losing him a season and a half in to a rival that only just joined the sport would be a blow it would scramble to cover. That is why the shortlist already exists. The moment Sainz leaves, the names start flying. A returning Sergio Perez has been floated. So has the young Argentine Franco Colapinto. Every open cockpit in this chain has 3 drivers hovering over it before the current occupant has even packed a bag. Nobody moves, but everybody is already positioned to pounce the instant somebody does, which brings the whole thing back to the one door everyone assumed was already open: Audi. The tidy version of this, the one where Sainz simply slides into a shiny new Audi and everyone lives happily, runs into one wall. Audi says there is no seat. The man who supposedly wants Sainz, Binotto, stood in front of the cameras at the British Grand Prix and shut the speculation down cold. He said the team has 2 first-choice drivers and it is very happy with both of them. He talked up Nico Hülkenberg specifically, said the veteran still has plenty of fuel in his veins, still looks like a young driver, still has the focus and the consistency. Hülkenberg and the rookie Gabriel Bortoleto are both reported to be under contract through 2027. So on the surface, the door Sainz is staring at is bolted shut, and in this sport, that is exactly the kind of statement that means nothing and everything at the same time. Team principals deny active talks as a reflex. They deny them right up until the morning they announce them. But Binotto's version is not a vague brush-off. It is a specific, repeated commitment to the 2 drivers he already has, on a project he keeps describing as a long build toward the front, a team that only just arrived and is thinking in terms of years, not weeks. That makes it the single hardest wall in this entire chain. For Sainz to get his Audi move, that wall has to crack. And right now, Binotto is insisting it will not. That is what the paddock is saying out loud. Behind the scenes, the board is even wider than Audi and Williams. Aston Martin is waiting on Fernando Alonso to decide whether he wants another season at all, a decision expected right around that same Hungarian weekend. His own designer is reportedly hoping a fresh upgrade convinces him to stay in the cockpit, while a rival team is said to be quietly trying to lure him back to where his career began, with new money behind the offer. Haas has a seat under pressure, with Esteban Ocon the name most often tied to it, and a hungry younger teammate pushing hard from the other side of the garage. Every one of those situations is a domino too, and every one of them is frozen behind the same gate. And the gate is one race away. The season does not even resume gently. Next comes Spa, then the Hungarian Grand Prix. Then the summer break slams down and takes the whole paddock off the radar for a few weeks. But it is the day after Hungary that everyone has circled. That is when Verstappen's claws can wake up. That is when Alonso is expected to choose. That is when the man at the front either jumps or stays, and either way, he sets the order that everyone below him has to fall in. There is a personal edge to this for Sainz that the standings do not show. He is not a young man collecting his first seats. He is a proven race winner spending what should be some of the best years of his career at the back of the grid, watching a title fight he is not part of, waiting on a rival's decision to hand him a way out. Every month this stays frozen is a month he does not get back. That is why he set a deadline. That is why he will not wait past the summer. And every one of these drivers should be nervous, because the entire chain hangs on Verstappen actually jumping. If he looks at the shortened calendar, at the €8 million still sitting on the table, at a Red Bull begging him to stay, and decides the risk is not worth it, the gate never opens. Sainz stays stuck at the back. Tsunoda stays in the corridor. Audi keeps its wall up, and Williams keeps its seat filled. One man choosing to stay put would freeze 15 careers in place for another year. That is how much power sits with a driver who has barely said a word he did not have to. Whether Carlos Sainz ends up at Audi is the easy question, the one the whole grid keeps asking out loud. The one that actually settles it sits underneath. In a grid where 15 drivers are trapped behind a single locked gate, who actually moves first? And does the man holding the key even know that the entire market is standing on his decision? Sainz says he is ready. Tsunoda is waiting in the corridor. Audi says the door is shut. McLaren swears there is no seat while quietly hiring the champion's own engineer. And none of it means anything until Max Verstappen decides whether the midfield is a place he is willing to spend one more year. He has until the day after Hungary to keep everyone guessing. After that, the dominoes stop waiting, and they start to fall.